Hello everyone. In this video series we are going to be examining Rumi's Divan-i Shams Tabrizi. We already have the Rumi podcast where we have generally analyzed Rumi's poems, especially his Ghazals. In this video series I aim to delve deeper, present to you a fairly technical and in-depth analysis of Rumi's Divan line by line and Ghazal by Ghazal. But importantly, I will be using two main commentaries, one from Karim Zamani, an excellent commentary on Rumi's Divan. He also has another set of commentaries for Mathnavi, and one of the two volume commentaries of Divan by Shafi'i Kadkani, and of course all of them were in Farsi. But I will be translating the necessary parts and providing you with the necessary analysis. In episode 1 of the Rumi podcast, we analyzed Ghazal 1 from Divan, but this is going to be an in-depth analysis. I will not repeat what I said there. That was more generic and more poetic. Here we care more about analysis. Now, the first couplets of this beautiful Ghazal says, ای رستخیز ناگهان وی رحمتی بی منتها ای آتشی افروخته در بیشه اندیشه ها. Oh, the sudden resurrection. Oh, the boundless mercy. Oh, the fire kindled in the woods of thought. What does that mean? Rumi is speaking to the Divine Beloved. He's saying that you, God, are like a sudden resurrection that transformed my entire existence from the materially oriented life I was having. You transformed me from the material-oriented life into a spiritual one. You are an endless grace. Here is the interesting part. The second hemistich said, ای آتشی افروخته در بیشه اندیشه ها. Oh, you who are like a kindled thought in the woods of thought. There are different interpretations of this hemistich. For example, Karim Zamani in volume 1 interprets it this way, saying that Rumi is saying to God that you are like a fire, the fire of love, ecstatic fire, in the woods of thought, in the jungles of thought, and those woods are like the trivial, unnecessary human thoughts, not proper ones. So he assigns a negative connotation to the word thoughts here. That is one way to go. My interpretation is that by the woods of thought, of course, he's referring to every tree being human thought, but not necessarily in a negative sense. I believe that here Rumi is saying that reason alone and human mind alone is incapable of recognizing the divine fully. Therefore, you, God, essentially are like a fire. What does fire do? The fire burns trees. You are like a fire. Your essence is like fire that burns through our mind. That is, your essence eludes our rational thinking, our conceptualizing mind. Through our minds, we cannot recognize you essentially. That is my interpretation. Which one is true? We don't know. Rumi usually leaves these interpretations open on purpose. He wants the audience to think. He doesn't want to chew everything and present it to the audience because he doesn't need to, and he doesn't aim to convince the audience verbally or rationally. He's just pulling into his own style of narration and imaginative poesis being poetry, to transform you. So we're going to be reading with that mentality. Here, some people have said that this poem could be in reference to Shams Tabrizi. I have been very careful in all my videos to clear out the misunderstanding that Rumi was in love with Shams historically. I mean, historical Shams. Shams for Rumi was nothing more than a divine manifestation's mirror. Shams was the mirror on which Rumi observed the divine manifestation to the best of his ability and to the capacity of Shams Tabrizi. So it's not that Rumi was in love with that person. Rumi was in love with that reality, with the reality of that person, was in love with that mirror, not with that person. So if we read this with that mentality, sure, that makes sense and I agree with that. But if we go the other way around, pointing everything back to this love-oriented, physical love-oriented reading of this, we wouldn't be just doing justice, to put it as polite as possible, to that relationship. There was this historic spiritual relationship between the two, like bringing it down to such a shallow depth is not just to such a thinker. Here, Karim Zamani says, there is no problem in assigning this poem to, like in reference to Shams Tabrizi, we can do that. Especially he's starting with the part that Rumi says, "O sudden resurrection." We could interpret this in a way that Shams was his resurrection. That is, Shams was the tool through which God resurrected Rumi. We have seen this in Rumi's poems, and Karim Zamani agrees with this. Rumi refers to humans as resurrection as well. For example, there was this particular poem, "Pas Muhammad sad qiyamat bud naqd," referring to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu. Rumi is saying Muhammad was 100 resurrections, the day of resurrection, meaning that in the day of resurrection, all the veils will apparently go away and we will see the truth as it is, not essentially. But the perfect man in Sufi mysticism is the person who is already experiencing that state, that resurrection-like state of seeing the truth without veils, at least partially. And this is why Rumi refers to the perfect man as resurrection. So with this reading, we could say, yes, here it is okay to think that he's talking to Shams Tabrizi, "O sudden resurrection, O you Shams who came and transformed me, who resurrected me from my material body to my spiritual, divine, cosmic self. You are an endless grace because you are the mirror reflecting the endless grace." We could read, "Ey آتشی افروخته در بیشه اندیشه ها." You are the fire kindled in the woods of thought. Here we're going to be a little bit struggling in assigning this to Shams Tabrizi. But again, we could see this symbolically in the sense that how did Rumi experience divine love? He experienced it through Shams. Shams was the channel that divine love came to Rumi's life. He was the fire set in Rumi's life. So Shams could be considered as the fire in the woods of Rumi's thoughts. And he was literally the person who resurrected Rumi. And here Karim Zamani gives this interesting historical account. Rumi was in the bazaar. One thing leads to another. He starts whirling sama, which is iconic Rumi dance, because of the spiritual ecstasy. And he gets to a point that he takes off his clothes, and then one of the rich persons of the city brings him a very high quality, expensive clothes. He wears that, moves on, reaches somewhere that some Armenians were in a place, and there was some music playing. Hearing this, Rumi gets selfless again, starts whirling, and the Armenians come out and join him, respect him. He gives several other examples, and we have seen this in almost in a tradition that Rumi has this inclusive perspective towards religions and traditions. Yes, he's prioritizing obviously Islam, and that's a given, but he's very respectful of other religions and traditions, which I think why he's become so, one of the reasons why he's become so universal. He's not one of those strictly minded, appearance-oriented people who says, okay, my way is the only way, you're all going to hell. He doesn't do that. Just to elaborate, the reason I'm using interpreting fire as divine love is that this is what Rumi is telling us. In many places in his poetry, he equates love with fire, and there is a reason for that. Fire, the nature of fire is heat and burning, and Metaphorically, Rumi takes that as love having those effects as well. Love burns the lover's heart. Love heats the lovers from inside their heart. So it is in this sense that we are using the word fire. But we're going to stop a little bit here on the word andishe, thought. Rumi said, "Oh, you, the fire kindled in the woods of thought." Here, in the first couplet of this ghazal, Rumi is using the word thought in its generic sense. Our worldly thoughts, they can be negative, they can be positive. Useful thoughts that we have through which we arrive at truth, and aimless, scattered, wandering thoughts that lead us nowhere, and they're futile. So it is in this sense it appears that he is using the word in the first hemistich. Later on he's going to be using it in a more specific positive sense, but we're not there yet. In the second couplet, Rumi says, امروز خندان آمدی مفتاح زندان آمدی بر مستمندان آمدی چون بخشش و فضل خدا. Today you came smiling as the key to my prison. You arrived for the poor like the grace and the generosity of God. Rumi is speaking to God, saying, "Oh my divine beloved, now you have come to me from your grace. You are carrying the key to my prison. I was stuck in my material existence. I was stuck with the conceptual, rational mind, limiting myself by these. And you came to me. You sent Shams to me, using him as a tool, bringing me that key that let me out of this prison." It says here, "Bar mustmandan amadi chun bakhshish o fadl khuda." And you are like grace and abundance that have come to the poor. Spiritually poor people like me, says Rumi before, are becoming rich by your grace, are becoming rich by knowing you more. Divine knowledge makes you richer intellectually and spiritually. خورشید را حاجب تویی، امید را واجب تویی، مطلب تویی، طالب تویی، هم مبتدا هم منتها. You are the veil of the sun. You are the necessity of hope. You are the sought, the seeker, both the end and the beginning. Here, Rumi seems to be speaking more explicitly to Shams Tabrizi. Again, metaphorically, he's saying that you are the sun's cover, sun being God, divine reality, and you are its cover. What does that mean? I'm going to get into that shortly. And you are the cause of hope, bringing hope into my dark life. You are my purpose, meaning that I, Rumi, want to achieve your spiritual status. So I'm targeting that status to reach and go beyond that. And interestingly, when Rumi cannot find, the second time Shams left Rumi, when Rumi strives to find Shams, he couldn't find him physically, but we know through his poems that he says that I found Shams Tabrizi inside me, within me. I found Shams's reality within me. This is how we could read this couplet when he says, "You're the sought, you're what I'm seeking." It is that spiritual status that he was seeking. Now, coming back to the veil of the sun, here Shafi'i Katkani offers a very interesting interpretation. Rumi is using this in the sense that in the past, when you wanted to see a king or a queen, first there was this person standing at the gate and covering, veiling the king. In order to meet the king, first you should have met that person, the person holding the veil, and you needed to arrange your meeting through him. And Rumi is, according to Shafi'i Katkani, Rumi is referring to Shams as that person. If we want to see the king, God, we gotta arrange it with you. We gotta pass through you, get help from you to arrive at that level and have that meeting. And that is just total gorgeous interpretation. In the fourth couplet we have در سینه ها برخاسته اندیشه را آراسته هم خویش حاجت خواسته هم خویشتن کرده دوام. This is one of the most elegant couplets in the entire Divan. You, God, rise within hearts, adorning thoughts. Here, thoughts have positive sense. We'll get into that. You rise within hearts, adorning thoughts. You are the one who calls for need, and you are the one who fulfills it. According to Islamic mysticism and metaphysics, heart is the place of divine manifestations. The divine manifests within the seeker's heart, adorning the heart and giving truth, enlightening the person. Rumi says, در سینه ها برخاسته, you rise in the chests, in the hearts. And then following that it says, اندیشه را آراسته, you decorate thoughts. What does that mean? If we put these two together, it appears that Rumi is saying that when we receive divine manifestations, our thoughts are guided. Thoughts are scattered, wandering, both negative and positive. But when we reach that true knowledge that you give us by manifesting yourself, by enlightening us, our thoughts are directed more accurately and truthfully. Hemistic has هم خویش حاجت خواسته هم خویشتن کرده روا. This is magnificent. Rumi says, God, you come to our heart, you manifest yourself in our heart, you put in order our thoughts. What happens then? Then he says, you put the need in our hearts. You put the prayer in our hearts. You make us ask for help from you. You cause to ask help from you, and you are the person answering to that call. You implant call within our hearts, and you are the person who's answering that call. There is this lover-beloved mutual dialogue style thing going on in this hemistic, which makes it very, very elegant. Rumi is saying that it's not you who is always praying, always asking God for help. Sometimes God himself puts that desire within you, puts that call within you, and then he answers you. ای روح بخش بی بدل وی لذت علم و عمل باقی بهانه است و دغل کین علت آمد وان دوام. O life giver without equal, O joy of knowledge and action, all else is pretense and deceit. This is the sickness, and you are the cure. You, God, are a rival, the soul giver, life giver. You are the true joy and pleasure of knowledge and action, of theory and practice. Because dealing and engaging with anything other than you is a sickness of the heart. Engaging with anything other than God, Rumi calls sickness, and you alone are the cure for that sickness. The implicit assumption here being that whatever we do in life intentionally, that should be related to God. Sometimes we are doing something, let's say we are praying, we are directly, consciously, intentionally focusing on God. But sometimes we're doing other things, and I'm reading, let's say. I'm not directly there, not connecting, for many of us at least. In the implicit assumption here being that even in that condition you should be connecting that to God. With the intention of whatever this is that I'm reading, I wish this could get me closer to God. We should be in a state of constant meditation, which reminds me of Plotinus's historic reports. Porphyry, for example, says, I think it was Porphyry, who said when we were talking to Plotinus, it was so obvious that he's not 100% of his attention is not with us. He's half here, half about, meditating at the same time as talking to us and listening to us. That on the one side, on the other, everything we do in life should be passing through that filter, according to Rumi. That's where things find value. Otherwise, it would be a sickness and futility. According to Rumi, reaching true joy and happiness is only through God. Happiness is only in truth, not in triviality, not in futility. I love, let's say, some trivial things in this life. We see people love luxurious things. Is that going to take you to the truth? Or is that a futile interest, a futile desire? Of course the latter, implies Rumi. True happiness comes to us only through God. In the next couplet we have مازان دغل کژبین شده با بیگنه در کین شده گه مست حورالعین شده گه مست نان و شوربا. Because of the sickness of the heart, because of that deceit, we have become double-eyed, says Rumi. We have become the enemy of the innocent. Sometimes we are in love with the angels, sometimes we are in love with the stew and bread, meaning that because we haven't realized our true aim, because we haven't been able to connect to the truth, we don't know who our friend or enemy is. Sometimes we take our innocent friends as enemies, indicated by بیگناه در کین شده. We become grudged against the innocent. The second hemistich is very interesting. گه مست حورالعین شده گه مست نان و شوربا. Rumi is saying that sometimes we fall in love with the promises of the joys and beautiful experiences that religion tells us that we will be experiencing in paradise, represented by beautiful black-eyed angels. He uses the word Hurul-Ain. Hurul-Ain is an angel apparently in paradise with black, bright, beautiful eyes, very big eyes. He's implicitly criticizing the transactional relationship of the human being and God. Many of the faithful, many of the religious people connect to God and worship Him just to get that heaven, to get those pleasures, the angels Rumi is talking about, or to avoid hell. Rumi is criticizing those implicitly. Then he says, sometimes we are in love with angels, gah mastenan u shurba. Sometimes we are in love with the bread and stew. Meaning that sometimes we delve too much into material trivialities, that we fall in love with the baseless things. We fall in love with eating, with satisfying our sensual desires. But these are not gonna take us anywhere. These make us double-eyed. The sickness of the heart continues, and unless we seek the truth, that's not gonna go away. In sokr bin, hel aql ra, win noql bin, hel naql ra, kaz bahr nan o baql ra chandin nashayad majara. Witness this spiritual intoxication, forsake shallow reason, taste this spiritual sweetness, and discard quotations. For life's value is not worth mere bread and vegetables. This is an amazing couplet. Rumi says, look at the mystic intoxication. It is the spiritual mystical experience that you should be seeking. That is the perfect way to attain divine knowledge, not through partial reason. But we should be careful here. Rumi is not rejecting reason altogether. He's targeting partial reason, which I will be discussing in another video. He's not rejecting reason, rather he's pointing out the limitations of partial reason, the conceptualizing mind, following only and only rational argumentation to arrive at a conclusion, to arrive at truth, following premises to arrive at conclusion. Be it as it may, they're going to be helping you, of course, and Rumi acknowledges that. I will be demonstrating that in another video. I do not accept that Rumi was anti-philosophy. Rumi is anti-absolutely rational philosophy, saying that put away partial reason. That's not going to get you to the center of this matter. It's going to help you to some extent, but there you need another faculty. There you need mystical experience to give you that truth. Then he says, look at that sweetness. Forget about narration, meaning that forget about who said what. Again, implicitly criticizing the superficial take of religion, only saying, okay, such and such person said this, therefore I should do this. Such and such person said such and such, therefore God is such and such. forget about such and such. Experience God. God is present. He's not hidden in history books, according to Rumi. Second hemistic. Because of the vegetables and bread, it's not worth to get into these debates. Meaning, because of the worldly superficialities or worldly gains we could interpret, it's not worth getting through these futile debates. They're not going to get you anywhere. تدبیر صد رنگ افکنی بر روم و بر زنگ افکنی و اندر میان جنگ افکنی فی استناع لا یرا. You cast multicolored tricks upon the east and west, sparkling conflicts, crafting wonders so subtle they cannot be seen. What is Rumi saying here? He's saying that in order for the world to operate, in order for the trials that we are supposed to have in our lives, that's how we will be getting punished or rewarded in a transactional view, or because of the trials that will help us grow spiritually and morally. Again, in parentheses, we shouldn't be caring about that growth. We should be focusing the mind on the purpose, on the ultimate truth. But let's end that parenthesis, close that, and come back here. You plant many opposites. You establish wars between the opposites in the world, represented by Rumo Zang, west and east, or black and white. Rumo Zang in Farsi have dual meanings. Rumi here is referring to the opposites in the world. Through night we know day, through sickness we know health. You bring about all these opposites and you govern the world through opposites. میمال پنهان گوش جان مینه بهانه بر کسان جان رب خلصنی زنان والله که لاغ است کیا. Trouble the soul in secret, use tools to realize your will. The soul cries, O Lord, deliver me. By God, this world is but a child's play. Here is referring to God, not Shams anymore. He's saying, you, God, put us through challenges, put our souls through challenges using the opposites in the world, so that you free us from our desires, so that you free us from our trivial wants, and so that we let go of the world's triviality and realize that there are higher values, truth, that we should be transcending the materiality to arrive at that. But you don't always do that directly. Sometimes, he says, sometimes you use tools, sometimes you use intermediaries to accomplish your aims. Be that Shams Tabrizi, that you used as a tool to awaken me, Rumi, to put your love, to awaken, to ignite your love in my heart. God, implicit assumption being here is that God does not always come and knock your door saying, look, come, believe me, or look, this is my love. He uses tricks, he uses intermediary tools to awaken us. Otherwise, if it was so obvious and if it was so direct, there would be no use in what religion tells us about trials. Then trials would have no meaning, and thus the hereafter would have no meaning, looking at it theologically. Then paradise and hell would have no meaning, because we see God, it's so obvious. In order for faith to find true value, in order for an individual to do something genuinely, it's not that there should be obviously seeing God, and because of that they wouldn't be doing anything like angels. The higher value for Rumi and in his thought, and we see this in his poems, is that the higher value comes when the existence of God, when monitoring the world by God is not so apparent to you, but it's a little bit shadowy at first, so that you use your free will and you use your faith, you rely on your faith to go towards God, and then doors will open. Echoing the Quranic verses when it says, when you start seeking, we show our signs too. God has put signs according to Quran in the world. There are signs within you and in the world. and upon the horizon, Quran says. Those doors will not open to us immediately, because otherwise everything would be too obvious, and faith and trials would mean nothing. So there should be this ambiguity here. So Rumi says, you are using those intermediary tools, you're using Shams, you're using others to realize your will, to realize your purpose. And that is beautiful. خاموش که بس مستعجلم رفتم سوی پای علم کاغذ بنه بشکن قلم ساقی در آمد الصلا. Be silent, I'm in haste. I race to the banner of knowledge. Set aside the paper, break the pen. The cupbearer has arrived. The call to joy resounds. Rumi says enough, silent to his partial reason. To the truth, I'm in haste to submit my life for the truth. Do not hold me back. And then he says, کاغذ بنه بشکن قلم ساقی در آمد الصلا. Put aside pen, put aside paper. Break pen, put aside paper, meaning that put aside rational reflection, put aside formal ways of seeking knowledge at this moment, not always. At this moment, put them aside. Why? Comes the latter part of the second hemistich. ساقی در آمد الصلا. The cupbearer arrived. What does that mean? Rumi seems to be saying that I was begging God, I was having this dialogue, I was asking for His grace, I was writing things, I was thinking. Finally, I got to that moment that divine manifestations started to appear. Divine manifestation is forming in my heart. And at that moment, he says, okay, put away the paper, break the pen. They are not going to be of no use here. The cupbearer came. God, the beloved, came to intoxicate me with His love. Meaning that when divine love appears, it is so overwhelming and so enlightening that you do not need other ways of attaining knowledge or joy. Now, this is the last couplet in the poem. I hope this analysis was helpful, and I believe it was. I use, not because of me, because of the commentaries, in-depth commentaries that these two geniuses have written. And I hope I could present Rumi's thoughts to you as he wished and wishes. We have a couple of podcasts on this channel. If you liked this podcast, you may watch our Rumi podcast, where videos are shorter, more poetic, more artistic. We also have another playlist examining similar thinkers, mystics, philosophers like Rumi, including Ibn Arabi, Mullah Sadra, Faiz Kashani, Sheikh Mahmud Shabastari, and Plotinus. See you next time.